Some memories don't soften with time. They hold their shape like frost on glass, delicate and stubborn, refusing the warmth of explanation. I've tried to file these nights under fatigue, grief, suggestion, any drawer that closes. But every so often, in the small hours, something rattles. A clock ticks in the wrong rhythm. My breath fogs when the room is warm. A voice I know is dead says my name in the tone she used when the kettle just began to sing. It's never dramatic. It's never loud. The night bends, just a little, and when it straightens, I'm not sure it returned to the same line. My name is Tyler. I'm 38 in this memory, a long-haul trucker out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, working a run I could drive blindfolded. I won't pretend I'm special. I've spent more nights at a steering wheel than in my own bed. I've made friends with yellow lines. You do a thing long enough, it does you back. I don't drink strong coffee anymore. I've got an ulcer that hates me when I pretend I'm 22. I chew mint gum and keep playlists offline because service dies out on US 285 between Vaughn and Roswell, and I like my songs to stay where I put them. It was late winter, 2016. Dry, cold. The kind that makes the skin inside your nose crack a little, tastes like metal when you breathe deep. The sky was clean and the road was a ruler someone forgot to pick up. On nights like that, your thoughts get tall. I remember passing mile marker 212, the number reflecting back like a small green wink. The CB had been mostly dead, except for an announcement from some local station about speed humps in Dexter. They ran it every hour on the hour, and the voice had that public service sincerity that makes you feel scolded, even when you're doing the limit. I keep habits. I look at the analog clock in the dash every few minutes without thinking. I watch the temperature gauge like it's telling me a secret. At 2:36 a.m., I tapped the clock face because the second hand had stalled. It jolted to 2:37, then settled. Fine, machines have hiccups. But then the GPS thunked, lost signal. Flat sky, flat road, stars like someone threw salt. It found itself again, and the playlist did something it never does. My track skipped backward and started over. You hearing that? I asked the CB out of habit, like the road itself wanted a witness. Channel 19 gave me static heavy with that old solder smell. Then a voice, male, easy drawl, cutting through like he was parked beside me. Breaker 19. Anyone got a copy? The slang was wrong. Not wrong as in unfamiliar. Wrong as in a soundtrack from a film about trucking. Not a real night in 2016. It felt practiced. At mile marker 213, I had that moment you get when you walk into a room and forget why you went there. A small dislocation, nothing big. The number popped in my headlights, then was gone, swallowed by the rear view like every number. 90 seconds later, there it was again. 213. The same dead coyote on the shoulder, its body pointing the same way. A piece of reflective plastic in its fur caught my light like an eyelid. You can tell yourself you missed 214, or that you misread a 218 with road grime. You can do the math and make 90 seconds equal a mile if you're willing to bend your speed to fit. I did all that. Then the billboard rose out of the dark, tall and honest, advertising a plumber with a 7-digit phone number. No area code. The paint had a faded wash like the sun had punished it for years. I had to say something out loud to hear how my voice sounded. No one runs 7 digits anymore, I said. Listen to me picking at details, like it matters. When I saw the diner, my chest tightened so sharp I thought about pulling over just to breathe. It wasn't here. I knew this road. The shoulders. The handful of places you could trust after midnight. The ones you see on the CB's rumor circuit. But there it was. A low, wide splash of warm yellow with a neon sign humming Sagebrush Grill. The last letters starting to bleed. A pickup from the 80s sat nose in, hood oxidized to chalk. The prices painted on the windows looked like jokes. Coffee, 25 cents. Pie, 60 cents. I could have passed it. I should have. Instead, I flipped my blinker because the human part of me wanted a light that wasn't mine. When I cut the engine, the wind went quiet inside the cab, like I'd closed a door in the air. The smell hit first. Hot oil. Paper that's been in a drawer for too long, a sweetness like old syrup. There's a kind of silence diners have in the dead hours, a hush edged with refrigerator hum and the faraway tick of something cooling. This silence was thicker, like it had weight. I stepped down, closed my door with that soft, heavy thunk my truck makes, and my breath fogged just a little, more than it should have. The bell over the door was a real bell, not an electronic chime, and it rang once, high and modest. The interior was clean without being new. Vinyl booths, a patch of duct tape on one of the stools like a silver blister. The radio by the register was solid, wood-paneled, a body you could hit, and it was murmuring a weather forecast for Saturday. I knew it was Tuesday. I looked at the chalkboard because it felt safer. The chalk loops had the confident thickness you get from someone who's been writing Meatloaf 2 nights a week since 1982. A woman came out from the kitchen wearing a white paper hat and a pink uniform I've only ever seen in pictures, and she was younger than the clothes wanted her to be. "You got a menthol," she said to me like we'd argued before. I shook my head because that's what you do when a script calls for it. "Coffee?" she asked. I heard myself answer. She wrote nothing down. The steam rose from the mug in a straight line, and then, this is the part I hate telling because it sounds like I'm trying too hard, it stopped. Not forever. Just a breath between breaths. A pause in the part of the world you don't think can pause. Then it continued, thin as thread. "Where you headed, hun?" she asked like people ask. "Roswell," I said, because that was the direction the road took me. "Any action?" She smiled, a real smile, not haunted at all. The register was the kind you muscle, keys with little black circles, a bell that rings when you complete the movement. When she rang me up, she pulled a rubber stamp from beside the machine, dabbed it on an ink pad the color of old cherries, and thumped my receipt. The impression was crisp. 2:37 a.m. The address beneath it was a string of numbers on a road that, in my head, ended in dirt and a fence. The CB crackled from where I'd clipped it to my belt. I turned it down without looking, embarrassed, like I'd let a ringtone go off in church. A truck horn sounded outside. My horn. That exact throat. The diner woman didn't react. She was wiping a ring off the counter that wasn't there. "You ever get highway static?" I asked, because I was the only one pretending this was normal. "Honey, all night is static," she said. I folded the receipt and slid it into my jacket pocket. There was a photograph on the wall of a high school baseball team. The edges of the frame were gum brown with age sweat. The boys' haircuts could have been anyone's father's. 1986. Scribbled in blue fountain ink on the white border. The clock over the pie case read 2:37, and its second hand ticked in decided clicks, not a smooth sweep. The noise slightly too loud for the distance. I needed to leave. The feeling came without panic. Just a certainty that this scene didn't want me, and whatever grain of me didn't fit was the part getting pushed. When the bell above the door rang again, the air outside felt like a cup of water held too long. Skin temperature, the chill gone. The lot was empty except for my truck. The pickup's oxidized hood was gone like it had never been. The neon letters were off. In the glass, my reflection looked thinner, like the dark had taken a bite. I didn't run. I didn't dramatize it. I climbed up, shut the door, turned the key, and the world resumed the noise it makes when you drive. I could taste coffee on my tongue, bitter and a little burned, and there was something else under it, a clean taste, like stainless steel wiped with alcohol. I drove. I kept my speed. And when I passed mile marker 213 again, the coyote on the shoulder was gone. Later that week, at a truck stop where the oil smell never leaves the towels, a guy with a belly like a Christmas story laughed when I mentioned the sagebrush. "That place," he said, "burned to a slab back when I still had cartilage. Closed long before that. You must be mixing up your miles." He didn't mean it cruel. He meant it like you tell a man he's thinking of the other brother. I smiled. I took the receipt out in my cab that night to prove to myself it had a weight in the world. It was blank. Clean paper, slightly creased where my thumb had pressed it. I didn't throw it away. I don't know why. I haven't taken that stretch past 2 in the morning since. And every now and then, at 2:37, no matter where I am, I taste coffee that never really steamed. My name is Lauren, but everyone calls me Lo. I'm 29 in this story, a nurse who'd been living in 13-hour shifts so long that the days with normal sunlight felt imaginary. Baltimore in spring has this ache to it, wet and promising, and the ER near Patterson Park had a rhythm I could count without clocks. We pretended we weren't superstitious about the hour between 3 and 4, but you always feel the weight of the city then. The ambulances sound far away. Even the monitors get shy. The night this happened, the census was low, and the ache in my lower back was louder than my thoughts. Our supervisor, good woman, tired eyes, wrote her reminders on her palm, asked me to grab ringers from the stock. We were short in the main cabinet. 2 liters, she said. Thank you. She always thanked you like it was normal to be running. I wrote 310 on my notes without thinking before I stepped into the elevator. The fluorescent closest to the door was doing that slow blink that makes your head feel like it's breathing wrong. The elevator hesitated. I could feel the cables hum. When the doors opened, the hallway was familiar and not. Same shape, different skin. If you've ever walked into an older photograph of a place you know, if you've ever stood in your grandmother's kitchen and realized you're seeing it when it belonged to your mother, then you know half the feeling. The color on the walls was that green they always choose when someone says, calm. The oxygen panel at the head of the nearest bed had dials like an old radio. The carts were metal, heavy, edges that make your fingers wary. A soda machine stood like a witness, the kind that needed coins and had a light behind the plastic that made everything look colder. I'm a smell person. I remember rooms by scent. This was floor wax, ether that wasn't ether anymore, but the ghost of it, something lemon that had been old for a while. A wall clock hung crooked and firm, the kind with a loud, honest tick, and it told me 3:11. I watched the second hand, and it didn't keep perfect time. It made a small sigh at the bottom of its circle, like each climb was a decision. "Hello?" I called out because you have to say something. The hall made my voice thinner. Around the bend, a station sat perfectly set. Clipboards, paper charts with tabs as wide as your hand. I touched one. The paper was good quality, soft on the fingertips, and someone had typed the headings on a machine that bit into the fiber. A badge lay next to a bottle of correction fluid. The plastic had yellowed around the edges. LP, it read, black letters on white. My initials. That means nothing. It means coincidence. Keep saying that. Movement down the corridor drew me like a steady magnet. A woman in a uniform older than mine moved in profile, a calm shape with a low bun, sleeves that covered her elbows. There was nothing spooky about her. She didn't glow. She didn't look dead. She looked like someone working, thinking about a list. "Ma'am," I said, because my brain wanted an answer to prove she existed where I did. She turned very slightly. Her eyes passed over me in a way I cannot describe except to say it reminded me of being a child, standing behind a window, waving, while the person on the sidewalk looks past you at the reflection of something else. Her attention made a sound in my chest like a finger on a glass rim. The elevator button didn't trust me anymore. I pressed it, and it stayed dumb. The quiet grew more specific. It wasn't empty. It was packed with things not saying anything. The air cooled in that fast way a room cools when a door to winter stays open a second too long. My breath did that tiny fog you can only see if you watch for it. I hugged the 2 empty IV bags I'd grabbed out of habit, the plastic crackling as if they were a reason. The phone on the wall rang, not a chirp, not a musical ding, a bell, a full-mouthed metallic bell that a hammer hits. It rattled my teeth. I took the receiver because what else do you do when the past gets specific enough to ring you? "Room 17, a man's voice said, breath rasping like someone who took up smoking because the war did. "She's not breathing." The line ticked softly with his breath, and in that moment, I had that ER muscle memory, the one that moves your feet and picks up your hands before your head agrees. So I looked at the paper on the station. The ward map. Someone had penciled lines and notes in a neat, insistent hand. Room 17 was right where our modern hallway ended and a wall began. We hadn't had a 17 in years. Cold collected in my elbows. It's a sensation I've only gotten when I donate blood, and the saline flush is just a degree off. I flipped through the charts because the voice on the phone hit some old part of training that didn't know you can't run to help a ghost. In the admission log, one line caught me because of the name. Pierce, L. Under witness. The date looked wrong to me first. I thought it was a 9 that should have been a 2. 1979. I pressed my fingers on the ink like maybe I could smudge it into sense. It didn't move. A crash cart sat near the end of the hall, but it wasn't our cart. It had drawers that stuck and a defibrillator that was the defibrillator my instructor showed me in a training video. It made one short beep, like a cough that's a warning. That tiny sound had all the authority in the world in it. I said no, out loud, to the air, to the logic that had gone soft. I backed toward the elevator and jabbed the button the way you jab a friend who's not listening. The doors opened. The car was empty. It smelled like it always smells, dust and wire and traction grease. The ride up took 90 seconds longer than my gut expected. I know because when I pushed the doors open on our floor, my supervisor looked at me with concern without making a show of it and said, "Everything okay?" "You were gone 2.5 minutes. That's 90 seconds longer than the elevator makes you work for it." She said it to tease the tension out of my shoulders. She didn't know she was making the math. I handed her the bags. The labels had a logo we haven't used in a while, the font leaner, like a signature. I blinked, and they didn't. When I went to hang them in a room, the logos were the current ones. The beep of a monitor down the hall found the regular rhythm again, the one I would one day miss when I left the hospital and it wasn't part of my body anymore. I told myself I went to the wrong floor. We don't stock sub-basement. We haven't in years. We block the old ward and only open it for tours during the hospital's anniversary, because people like to see where we used to do things that we do better now. I told myself I misremembered the clock, that the tick was something dripping, that the phone never rang because we don't have a phone like that anymore. I didn't sleep for 2 days. When I finally did, I woke to the sound of a bell that wasn't in my apartment. The digital clock read 3:11, and the second digit looked darker than the others for no reason I could defend. I bought a white noise machine. It helps, sometimes. On nights when my chest feels hollow in the middle like a toy drum, I turn all my clocks face down. If you want proof, I have none that will survive your daylight. If you need the clean relief of a solved thing, I'm the wrong person. These nights aren't puzzles, they're folds. You can open a paper crane and see the lines where the wings were made, but you can't uncrease them. They live in the fiber now. If I sound certain, I'm not. If I sound calm, I cheat. I take the long way around the floors that echo. I don't take basement elevators when I'm alone. And some mornings, sweetness in the air and sun not up yet, I catch the smell of floor wax and think of a nurse I couldn't quite see looking past me to something I could not reach. My name is Raymond, though everyone on the coast has always called me Ray. In this memory, I'm 62, recently retired from the kind of electrical work that leaves a film of dust in your nose you can't blow out for a day and a half. I fill the long nights by volunteering at the Maritime Museum, the one that smells like rope and lemon oil and stories told a little too close to closing time. My wife died in late 2020. I say it plain because there's no right way to pad it. I don't sleep great. The water helps. The low animals of the harbor, the sounds that only move at night, water under pilings, a buoy knocking itself awake, the foghorn's fat breath, those keep me company. I walk the trail around the old lighthouse when the forecast says the fog will come in cold and honest. I tell myself I'm listening to the weather. Some nights it feels like I'm listening for her. It was late autumn, the kind of cold that finds the bone, not to hurt it, but to remind it how old it is. I'd gotten a message from one of the other volunteers about a trail light near the overlook, the one with the metal grate underfoot, blinking out and back like a tired eye. I keep a headlamp in my pack if I'm just checking bulbs. A little notebook too. Grid paper because the lines feel kinder. I'd swapped enough bulbs on this trail to do half of it by touch. There are 4 steep sections where the wind comes around the headland in a way that makes you lean without admitting you're leaning. If you've lived on an edge long enough, you learn to pretend you're not compensating. The foghorn at our station likes a 30-second cycle when the visibility's bad. You can feel those 30 seconds. Your pulse fits around them. The horn isn't music, but after enough winters it becomes a metronome your body can use. 3 small paces, a pause, 1 large breath. You make a private ritual out of a public safety device. When I stepped past the sign with the lighthouse silhouette like a knife, the horn sounded exactly as it always had, low, whole, polite about how large it was. My watch, a simple old analog because anything that needs charging makes me anxious, told me 3:01. The second hand clicked like a good lid on a pot. Salt has different smells. There's the afternoon salt, hot and flashy, and the night salt, which is iron and memory. That night the salt smelled like a wrench that has lived in a wet shed. Algae and iron, dark bread. The fog wasn't a wall. It was a stack of thin curtains. My headlamp flattened to a coin of light a yard in front of me. I wrote 3:01 on the first line of my notebook because that's what you do when you're trying to make a tool out of time. The first wrong thing was small. The horn came again after 18 seconds. It should have been 30. It's not unheard of for a test cycle to run short, only usually it's a lengthening, not a stutter. 18 seconds can happen to a human. It's a sneeze in a sentence, but a station doesn't sneeze. I stopped moving to listen for a correction. The fog took the echo and folded it in a way I can only describe as rounder than it should be, as if the sound had run on a polished surface. I told myself the horn had hiccuped, and then I told myself to stop making it a person. I walked past the first cluster of trail posts. The tops of them shine like old coins when the mist beads just right. That night, the water on the posts had a milk to it, a thin, almost mother-of-pearl sheen that made the grain underneath look soft. It could have been a trick of the headlamp. It could have been my eyes asking to go home. The second wrong thing was visible in the simplest possible way. The ground said something that contradicted it. My boot prints were ahead of me. You can argue that. People walk this trail. Boots look like boots. But the depth and spacing, my body knows the rhythm I walk this path. The small hitch where the gravel slides, the right foot turning in slightly on the downward slope because my ankle never healed right. My boot prints were ahead of me, and their direction was out, not in. I stood there too long. The horn took 52 seconds to sound again. I flicked the watch with my thumb. It's an impulse from the old days, when a machine that doesn't move might have just wanted ornery attention. 3:03 is a plain time. It looks almost symmetrical, a simple mirror. When my watch jumped to it out of order, no smooth second-hand climb, no minute hand commit, just a small tick of defiance, I felt a quiet made of static. People talk about silence as emptiness. Real silence in a working place is weight. The fog around me didn't go quiet. It went thick. I took another breath and tasted the cold as a flavor. There's a sweetness when the temperature drops fast, like the air has let go of what it was carrying. There's a camera on that trail, a motion-triggered thing we put in last week to catch folks cutting around the chain onto the bluff when the land is soft. It's not a fancy unit. It has a little screen, a little memory card that I don't trust, so I pocket the footage after a day. When I came to the post where we'd strapped it, the screen glowed like a pocket of dawn in the fog. That glow had body. The image displayed wasn't the smear of wet night a cheap camera will give you. It looked like a clear morning from a postcard, blue and white and honest. The trail visible all the way to the turn, the ocean like hammered metal beyond, and a man walking away from the lens with my shoulders and my knit cap and the way my left hand goes to my jacket pocket when I'm making a list in my head. I pressed the buttons, menu, back, any, like people do when they're trying to get a polite electronic thing to show them what the world is. The buttons were buttons. They clicked. They did nothing. It didn't feel malicious. It felt like a demonstration I hadn't signed up to attend. I carry a little radio because the museum long ago made the mistake of letting volunteers go just to check something, without a way to call for help. The radio isn't old. It's a plastic rectangle with a belt clip and a stubborn on-off knob. I turned the volume higher. What came out wasn't static, not the clean snow of nothing, but a hiss I recognized from our first winter together in the little rental by the river. My wife's breath when she fell asleep on her side made a sound the doctors said was nothing, just comfort. The radio made that. I said her name before I knew I'd said it. Not a hope, not a prayer, a muscle memory. There are tides the tables warn you about, and tides that happen because the weather is deciding to be someone else. I am too old to argue with water. I glanced over the edge of the trail at the low field of rocks where, at this hour, waves go to bruise themselves. The white wasn't where I expected white. The water lay lower, like someone had pulled a cover off a table. My headlamp bounced and embarrassed itself in the damp and showed me just enough to feel wrong. The horn sounded, full and like a throat cleared, at exactly 30 seconds. Then again at 30, then again at 30. The relief hit my chest like embarrassment. Look at me, reassured by the rhythm of a machine. The overlook is a platform with a railing. There's a plaque nobody reads, and a little metal box with a round lens that points toward nothing but fog more nights than not. I like the grate under my boots, how it lets your weight sound honest. When I stepped onto it, the fog made a narrow aisle. That's the best I have for it. Not a curtain pulled. An aisle. A polite walkway opened by a careful crowd. Down past the broken teeth of rock, in a notch of darker dark, a rowboat sat in water so still my brain first decided it was ground. The boat was white. It had a square stern, the kind you could put a little outboard on, but no outboard. A lantern hung at the bow, a real lantern with a glass that barnacled itself on the inside over time. The glow was shy. Particles in the air between me and it seemed to hold their positions too long. I know that boat. Or I know its brother. We used to display one like it in the museum entry. Paint flaking in satisfying curls. A sign with old serif letters talking about the men who rode out in weather I can't accurately imagine to move a line from one ship to another. We loaned it to a restorer 2 summers back. I haven't seen it since. You can tell me lots of boats look like lots of other boats. You'd be right. Still. The horn sounded 3 times in a short row. It doesn't do that. We test with triples when the station is offline, but at 3 in the morning in real fog, The horn speaks its own one phrase over and over. The three came like someone who knocks not to be heard but to be recognized. Knock, knock, knock. My body, traitor of many bad habits, stepped back without my permission, and in that step the previous me on this platform stepped forward. The prints on the grate, damp dust, not sand, aligned in a way I cannot argue with and cannot diagram. My footprints were coming to meet me from a nearer morning. There's a fear that isn't about being harmed. It's about being mistaken. If she said my name, it was with my voice. I'm not telling you there was a ghost, a woman shaped out of fog who reached up from the boat and made a gesture from our kitchen, return me to some unfinished dinner. I am telling you the sound of my name lifted from a memory I had not cued and arrived from a direction that the fog had made impossible. When I answer certain voicemails from certain friends, my first word is different. The way you say hello can tell the time. That night, the way I whispered her name told the time wrong. I opened the little notebook because I wanted to stop making this my body's problem and make it inks. The first page had 301 written clean in pencil. I put the tip down to write 303, explain the jump, make a note about the horn's waywardness. A piece of paper lay on the grate at my foot. It was from my notebook. The torn edge matched the rings where the spiral bites. The writing on it was mine. Not just my letters, the smallness of them, the pressure. I recognized the way the pencil sinks on a downstroke when I've been holding it too hard. The date wasn't a date. The time wasn't a time. It was a sentence made of numbers, 0303. Then below it, the kind of note I write when I'm trying to speak to a future me who won't read. Do not look down when the horn triples. A wave, delayed, found rock. The sound went through the railing into my teeth. The aisle of fog closed, not like it was pulled shut, but like it forgot it had ever been open. The boat, I will not argue with you about what I saw. It wasn't there anymore. The water beyond a certain point stopped making sense to my headlamp. The horn returned to its mathematics. I picked up the paper. I folded it in half. I put it in the notebook, then checked the notebook because I needed the rule of two objects to hold. There is the page I have, and there is its absence where it was taken from. The notebook looked complete, no ragged empty. The breath I took then hurt the way breath hurts on the first day the heat kicks on and the house is drier than your throat. I walked, not fast. I'm a stubborn man who hates to run in front of a machine that might be amused. On my way back, where the posts wear numbers you only see if you stop to look, I stopped to look. The camera's little screen was dead in the honest way of a battery that did its job well until a minute ago. I would tell you I removed the card and pocketed it, but that would be a lie. My hands knew better than to carry a thing that would need explaining. The fog slicked my jacket. The horn counted for me. 18 seconds, 30, 30, 52, 30. People are quick to make patterns or quick to deny them. The fog makes everyone into both kinds of person at once. The parking pull-off was empty. My truck sat under the one light that throws a cone like a paperback cover. The world had the ordinary size of a place cars are. I put the notebook on the passenger seat, and my hands did that battle old men's hands do, where they shake if you ask them to hold still and go precise if you give them a task. In the glove box is a little envelope of old financial papers, stubs from donations and receipts for the museum gift shop that I forget to turn in. I slipped the found page into that envelope, as if old ink might confuse new ink into hiding better. When I got home, I made coffee. I shouldn't drink at 3:30 in the morning because I wanted a job that had steps. Filter, grounds, water as close to a line as you can make it in the dark. I put the notebook on the table. In the envelope, the page had become a white sheet that held no graphite, no pressure marks. That annoys me still. The blankness wasn't spooky. It was rude, A week later, we were taking a school group through the then and now of navigation exhibit, and one of the docents I've known forever, she of the excellent braid and the voice that makes every child behave without knowing they've decided to, mentioned casually that her husband heard the station throw a triple at 3 in the morning the previous Tuesday. He says it used to mean testing. I told him we don't run that one anymore. I nodded like she'd told me the price of apples going up and said nothing. People receive stories better when you don't stand too close to them while they're receiving. I don't walk the overlook at night now. Daylight has not been taken from me, and I'd be a fool to throw it away. The horn still makes its 30, and some nights I let it count for me from the living room, window cracked to let the ocean inside like a dog you trust. I took the watch off 2 weeks after and set it face down in the dish by the door. If I need time, there's a phone I let sleep. I visit the museum on blank afternoons and clean the glass over the photographs with the quiet obsession of a man polishing something he can't restore. This is the part where you want me to say what I think. I am not without guesses, and none of them bear weight in wind. It is easy to say I was tired. Easy to say grief bends everything, that I tricked myself with my own history and miscounts. Easy to say old machines cough in old ways and people hear what they need a person to have said. I have said all those to myself. I keep saying them. They make a room you can live in. What remains after those comforts shuffle out is simple. There are hours of the night when you're not fully in the day you left and not fully in the day ahead. Your body changes governments. The world pours you past the lip of the cup. In those hours, the clock looks like a number that has swallowed its own tail. The hallway is the right length, but the air has the wrong age. The diner has a bell. The register rings a bell with a weight you can feel in your hand. A phone speaks a room that we don't put patience in anymore. A page is both where it is and where it isn't. We make a pattern out of 3 stories because 3 is a greedy number. Even if I hadn't told you these, I think you could have found your own thirds. I've learned that the bend in a night isn't a break. You don't sit down afterward and examine 2 pieces. You move with a caution your pride resents, and later you realize you weren't cautious. You were gentle. And then, like a stubborn hinge oiled by a hand that wants its door to last another winter, the world swings back the way it always has. Almost. I listen harder now. I speak softer to rooms that behave too well. I watch steam. I have an extra respect for the sounds machines make when no one is asking them to. None of this asks you to believe me. Belief is a warm blanket, and some nights are too sharp for blankets. I am only telling you that the night can bend without breaking, and when it straightens, it leaves hairline lines, like glass that has been both cracked and mended by its own pressure. I used to love the quiet. I still do. But I have discovered there are different kinds. The quiet when a thing is about to begin, the quiet when a thing has ended, and the quiet that presses when something is happening somewhere else you cannot see, and the sound of it somehow still reaches you. If you've felt the air change hands around 3 in the morning, if a clock has been cruel to you in a kind room, if you've heard the voice you miss most say your name from somewhere your head cannot map, I don't have an answer, but I don't think you're alone. Since then, silence bothers me more than any scream.